Harper Perennial and Harper Audio present Summer at the Garden Café by Felicity Hayes-Mccoy, performed by Marcella Riordan.
People who live in Finfarran say you can see 4 seasons of the year there in a single day. Then, in case you'd think they were being poetic, they point out that you'll never know what you ought to wear, so you'd better be prepared for anything. The county town of Carrick to the east is the gateway to the Finfarran Peninsula, which stretches into the Atlantic from Ireland's rugged west coast. It's a place of fishing ports and villages, the little town of Lissbeg with its shops and school and businesses, high cliffs, a deep forest, isolated farms and long golden beaches. As the clouds whirl in from the ocean, they bring rain on the wind, followed by rainbows. Cool, dew-spangled mornings can change to long days of burning turquoise skies, and end in red-gold sunsets, with a chill in the air that sends you home to hot whiskey and crackling fires. With fuel from the forest and turf from the bogs, Finfarran's homes have never lacked comfort. Yet, scattered along the peninsula, are emigrants' houses where the soul of the buildings has flickered out, along with the fire and the hearth. The house that people still call Maggie's place stands on a cliff in a rutted field, with its back to a narrow lane. For years it stood empty, its blind windows facing the ocean, and its slates shattered by storms. Self-seeded willow trees and yellow firs smothered the sloping field that ran down to the cliff top, and the boundary walls were lost in curling briars. Inside the house, dead ashes lay on the hearthstone, and crows' feathers drifted from the chimney onto the stone floor. Outside, by the gable end, were the fallen walls of a stone shed that had once held a turf stack. At some time or another, half the rubbish of the parish seemed to have ended up in Maggie's field. Among the rusting washing machines and fridge freezers were broken bits of furniture, old bikes, and knackered lawnmowers. Each summer they disappeared among waving flowers and grasses, and each winter they stood out starkly, like the bones of starving beasts. So every year the house and the field looked more decrepit, yet every autumn, when seeds fell from the flowers, and the grasses, the promise of renewed life, entered the earth. And under the fallen stones at the gable end were hidden the seeds of a story, waiting in silence and darkness to emerge into the light. Chapter 1. Although Hanna had lived there for over a year, she still opened her eyes each morning to a rush of astonished delight. Now, stretching luxuriously into a shaft of sunlight, she looked around. Her room was just big enough to take her double bed, a chair, and a chest of drawers. She had painted the walls herself, using a soft shade of yellow to contrast with the rich grey colour she'd chosen for the window frames. A ceiling-high built-in cupboard, which was a paler shade of grey, served as a wardrobe, and the rails of the old brass bed had been painted in deep cream enamel. The front door of the house opened onto a narrow field that sloped down to a low stone wall, beyond which was a grassy ledge, and a sheer drop to the churning Atlantic. The building stood alone, surrounded by fields, so, eager to allow as much light as possible into the small rooms, Hanna had hung no curtains on the windows that faced the ocean. Beneath the duvet on this unhurried Sunday morning, her toes curled with pleasure as she watched dust motes in the sunlight drift around the brass balls on the bedposts, which she'd polished to a golden sheen. It was late spring, when the weather on Ireland's Atlantic coast veered between balmy days that brought green shoots and days of howling, bitter gales that brought floods and freezing sleet. Yesterday, Hanna had pottered between the fireside and the slate workshop by the cooker, where she'd measured out buttermilk, flour and soda,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?